A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Saint Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord, glory to you.
Let us be attentive. At that time the Lord said to his disciples, "Provide yourselves with neither gold nor silver, no coin nor copper in your belts, no traveling bag, no change of shirt, no sandals, no walking staff. The workman after all is worth of his keep. Look for a worthy person in every town or village you come to, and stay with him until you leave. As you enter his home, bless it. If the home is deserving, your blessing will descend on it. If it is not, your blessing will return to you. If anyone does not receive you or listen to what you have to say, leave that house or town, and once outside it, shake its dust from your feet. I assure you it will go easier for the region of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than it will for that time."
Glory to you, O Lord, glory to you.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to him forever.
Dear brothers and sisters, today in our calendar on June 28th, we have the translation of the relics of the holy and mercenary physicians, Cyrus and John. And the second, and that happened in 412. 1600 years ago. Next year will be exactly 1600 years ago. The second saint commemorated today, and it's again a translation of the relics. Translation of the relics of the holy priest martyr Theodore Romzha, Bishop of Mukachevo. And that happened in 2003, less than 10 years ago. They happened on the same day, and this bishop, Theodore Romzha, was somewhat similar. He comes from the same generation of the bishops and of the priests that we commemorated yesterday, Bishop Nikolai Chernetsky and Father Emilian Koch. This bishop was he was very young. He became priest at an early, as soon as you can become a priest according to the canon law, which is 24 years old. He was very successful. He was very good in his studies. He became a bishop at a young age, comparing for a bishop at 35, and he started his work in the Transcarpathian region in Mukachevo and Uzhgorod, which were the two main cities in his diocese. He was young, full of energy. He was working a lot. He was going to all different places, celebrating the liturgy, bringing people together, reconstructing the parishes. And then World War II broke. Once again, the function of the church in times of war, in times when death happens every few seconds, when we are faced with destruction, hatred, killing, death, the function of the church in these times is the importance of its function is paramount. Is that how you say it? Paramount. It's very important. And he really understood that. Even though he was not old, he did not have a lot of life experience, but he had enough Christ experience to go, like in this gospel today we hear, from house to house. In the places where he would be heard, he would stay and preach. In the houses where he would not be heard, he would get out and go to the people who would listen to him. He carried on his message, not his message, the message of Christ. and he was received. To the point that when the Soviet army occupied the city, and they wanted to stop this young and successful man from his activity, from his service to his people, to his church, because what they wanted to suppress the church, which actually happened. And they couldn't. He was not a guy to sit at home so they could just come at night and arrest him. He was always around and about, preaching, working, talking to the people, traveling around his diocese. So they set up a trap for him. One day he was returning from one of the parishes that he visited, and a heavy truck ran into his carriage, and he did not die in that. He was probably supposed to die, but he didn't. He was just very badly, severely injured. So he was taken into a hospital, and they finished their job in there. They sent a nurse with poison in a syringe, and she came and gave him the shot so that he died. A young man. I do not recall exactly how old was he when he died, when he was killed, when he was martyred. When a young, full of energy man. But his name, his memory, his martyrdom did not go away. It did not cease to exist with his human existence in this world. His relics were preserved until the time when the church became free again in the early 90s, and in 2003 his body was recovered from his grave and moved to the cathedral in Uzhgorod, where anybody can come and pray to him and turn to him for whatever needs we might have. Yesterday, today, we are commemorating these modern saints. People who listen to this gospel like the one we heard yesterday and the one we hear today. These words that we hear yesterday and today were the words turned to apostles when he sent them to preach. He sent them to the houses. And we see how Christ instructs his apostles to look for a worthy person in every town or village or country and stay with him until you leave. Through these people, through these saints that we commemorate, Christ comes into our home. Through their example, through that letter like we read yesterday, through meditation of their lives, through their deeds, like the works of these two bishops, Mykolai Chernetsky from yesterday and Theodore Romzha of today's calendar. Through their work, the church in those territories where they spent a short time as bishops, the church, after the Soviet government took everything over, closed all the churches, killed or deported all of the priests to Siberia, suppressed religion. But thanks to the work of those two men, and many others, the church survived under communism, but survived under suppression of the regime. I was born in this time and I grew up. I don't remember it too well. I was still a child when I was doing my first steps in religion, getting to know God through catechism, through the teaching that I received from my parents and my grandparents. The liturgies that we had in the houses when the priest would come by night, and we would put newspaper and other heavy things to cover the windows so the people from outside wouldn't see light coming out from the building. And in the middle of the night we would have these liturgies. All these things, they were done by these bishops and priests who persevered, who took the commandment of God to go and teach to the final moment of their lives. They did it entirely. They followed through with the choice they made, with the vocation they received. But on their end, they did all possible. They are saints. Well, what about our end? Through them, church has been brought to us. Through them and through so many others Imagine 2,000 years of history. In these 2,000 years, how many moments were there when there were people like them, martyrs, who dedicated their lives and gave it up for Christ, so that today, here, in this little chapel in Florida, we know about God. We are gathered here only because they were there, and that they were the good, worthy persons. What are we? How is our household? How is the household of our soul? Christ tells his apostle to find this worthy person and stay in that house, stay in that soul until they leave. Bless this home. If the home is deserving, your blessing will descend on it. If it is not, your blessing will return to you. How are we? What is our soul filled with? Is it receiving to Christ's message? What would he say if he came, he looked into the soul, and how would he be received there? How do we receive his word? How do we receive his truth, his light, his nourishment, his sacraments, his holiness that is entirely for us? At the end of this gospel today, we hear the condemnation. I assure you, it will go easier for the region of Sodom and Gomorrah. I hope I say it right. The two cities that in the Old Testament are signify sin and corruption. But as Christ puts in different, he mentions these two cities in other occasions, and the apostles then in the letters of Paul and in the book of Revelation, they are again and again repeated and mentioned, because Sodom and Gomorrah were places where sexual sins took place, and they were condemned for the sexual sins. But we don't want to go back and spend a lot of time meditating on that. But these two cities signify corruption, internal, not external, but internal corruption inside. Those people who lived there were probably kind and good, but inside they were rotten. Their souls were rotten. Homosexuality, fornication. These two sins were the main sins in that city. These sins are internal. They hardly damage anything on the outside. They damage the soul. They damage us inside. If Christ, but that is only the example. He knows these two cities to indicate internal sins and our internal household. Well, let us meditate today. How is our household, the household of our soul? Is it ready to receive Christ, and would Christ stay with us? This is an indication to a very important sacramental theology point. We have all the sacraments, we have liturgies, we have communion, we have the sacrament of reconciliation. In these moments, we let Christ enter, but do we let him stay with us? As the people that we commemorate today did, and God stayed with them and guided their lives until the very end, and that is what is important to us. Not only let him in, but also stay with him until the end of our lives, whenever it might be. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to him forever.